Good morning or afternoon, whatever time of day it is when you're looking at this. But today I'm here talking about introductions and thesis statements. We're getting ready to go into outlining our very first essay. So I wanted to give you some background on this type of paragraph and part of that paragraph to help you feel a little bit more steady as you move forward. Sometimes introductions can feel like the toughest for students to write, so I thought maybe I could give you some ideas and background knowledge to make it feel a little bit more manageable. So let's first talk about introductions. So your introduction should start as a broad appeal and move into a more narrowed focus. So I like to think of an essay as an hourglass where the introduction to the top, so it starts really wide and it slowly narrows in to where like the sand's going to drop out. And then the narrow part is the body part of your paragraph. It's absolutely focused in and understanding like where are we moving, and then your conclusion will then do the opposite where it starts real narrow and then you'll broaden it back out. So in your introduction then you're starting really broadly and you have to catch us all, get our attention, give us some context, and move us to the point of your essay. So that broad appeal can be done in a couple different ways. In K-12 education, a lot of times instructors will tell you to start with a question or a definition or like a surprising statement. All of those can work, but you want to make it sure it's appropriate for the rhetorical situation you're writing in. Sometimes you're just going to say like, many people believe this, but, or if you're thinking about your advertisement evaluation essay, you could be thinking about like marketing is more than just a gimmick. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, right? I've started really broad, marketing in general, and now I can bring it back in. In your introduction, do you want to give a brief context of the piece of writing you are creating? Most of the time it's going to be an essay, but you never know. So brief context of what you're going to discuss, because sometimes people are going to be reading your essay or listening to your speech and not understand the context or not know the context. So giving a brief focus on that context can help. If you are going to discuss a specific text, remember text can be an image or a word-based text, you do need to introduce that. So advertisement evaluation essay, I would introduce my advertisement. If I was doing a rhetorical analysis of a speech, I would introduce the speech. If I'm doing a literary analysis of a poem from the Romantic period, I need to give context of both the poem and the Romantic period and who the author is. So don't forget to leave that out of your introduction if that's something you're doing in this essay you're writing. One thing to remember is that your introduction should always end in your thesis statement. That might feel a little bit different because when we write body paragraphs, we say start with your topic sentence, which is like a mini thesis. However, for your introduction, because you're starting broad and you're bringing us in through that context, make sure you're ending in that thesis statement so we know exactly where we're going from there. I'm going to tell you more about thesis statements in a second, but that's just where you need to put it. However, what may sound a little bit strange is that you need to write this introduction last. Trying to introduce an essay or a speech or a person that you don't know is kind of hard, right? You could, if someone was like, hey, I need you to introduce Jane Doe, but you've never met Jane Doe before, but you're supposed to introduce Jane Doe before you meet her, how would you do that? You don't know anything about Jane. Same thing with your essay. Develop your thesis statement. You can go ahead and throw that out there, right? We have to know it before we write our essay. Go ahead and outline or develop your body paragraphs and then loop back for your introduction. Now that you know where it's going, you can introduce to prepare us for that context. I think that's where students often can get caught up, is that you don't write your introduction last. You do it first, but you don't know where you're going, so how do I say? And then you get really caught up and your brain shuts down. So remove that pressure from yourself. Come back to that at the end. So, your thesis statement. A thesis statement is an argument every time. It shouldn't just be like a recitation of facts, a summary. It needs to be something that can be argued. Now, you may be making a claim that's not necessarily your own opinion, but you are going to argue it and support it, and that's okay. So in academic writing, we have to be able to step back a little bit and remove our bias to really make that argument. Now, in a lot of classes where you get to choose your own prompt, yeah, your thesis is probably going to be your opinion, but it has to be supported and logically argued. Your thesis statement should also provide a map for the paper, meaning the thesis statement should tell me what to expect the conversation to be. Sometimes it might be so specific that you say this is my argument because of X, Y, Z. Well, then now my first body paragraph, X, Y, and then I'm going to move into Y, and then I'm going to move into Z. But it is nice because it can provide you a blueprint, and it's something that we have to remember to connect every idea back to. No matter where I am in the paper, whatever my argument is, whatever my analysis is, I need to connect back to that thesis statement and close the loop. As you're writing your thesis statement, you're refining it and you're developing it, remember to consider the what and how of your argument. So, what are you arguing? What are you trying to prove? Make sure that's very clear in your thesis statement. Consider the type of sources you're going to be using and what do they say and how are they supporting you as well. However, remember that you are making an argumentative claim, not just a description. So that this is an example of how that can look. The house on Mango Street suggests that maturity only comes through difficult experiences. I'm arguing that in this novel, I can find maturity in difficult experiences. That's a thesis statement. And the second one is not. The house on Mango Street tells the story of Esperanza as she grows up in her neighborhood. That's not a thesis. That's just a summary. So you have to make sure that your thesis statement, the what, is an argument, not just a summary. Because if you're just summarizing things, then there's nothing to argue. Where are you going to go with that? Then on the how side, think about how do you know that your argument is true? So this can be looking at content. So, are they different or similar messages in your sources? What are their ideas? What are their arguments? What's their evidence in those sources? You can think about the approach and style of your sources. So what methods or techniques are they using? What is the quality of sources? So if you're doing like an evaluation of something, think about like, are they trustworthy? Are they persuasive? Are they effective? Maybe are they interesting? So the how you know it is based off sources, but there's different ways to consider those sources. However, at the end of the day, your thesis statement needs to tell me what you're arguing and how you're arguing it with consideration to what your evidence actually says. So hopefully this will help you as you begin developing your thesis statements a little bit more.